I'm here to give you a whirlwind tour of Bash CI with ShellCheck and Bats, basically trying to convince you all to test your shell scripts, because we all have shell scripts. So first of all, what's CI? For those of you who don't use it, continuous integration. So the basic, we typically mean having a series of checks and tests that you run on every push, and you want to make these pass before you merge or before you deploy or something like that, just to keep your code healthy. So the first thing so why do you want this for Bash? Well, fundamentally, shell scripts are code. You should be testing your code. The same benefits as any other CI process. Ease of development, reduced bug count by preventing regressions, and better security by integrating things like ShellCheck. Now, ShellCheck is basically a linter. And what linting is analyzing your code to look for bugs, or more importantly, to look for things that could be done better. And this is really important for Bash, because Bash is a really loose language. Like, there's lots of ways to do things in Bash, but a lot of them have a lot of pitfalls. Sometimes all of them have pitfalls, and yet we have to use this language. So it's important to find the best way to do things, and ShellCheck can help. So just to give you a little example, this is based on something in the Plotly code base. Just on startup, we need to set some ownerships. So we go through all our apps, we look for the executables, we set the ownerships of the executables. And so let's see what ShellCheck thinks of this. So it didn't really like it. So one of the big things I'm going to call out is that we should be double quoting our variables. And this is really important if the variable could have come from the user, because if they put a space in or they put a star, you could get some globbing. You could even get a security issue. So here we're going to quote them. And this is going to make our code a lot safer. But you'll notice we have a warning now. I've gone too far. I've quoted my star.app in the second one. And that actually will prevent the glob from happening. So the correct thing to do is to just quote the app's path variable and let the glob do its thing. So now onto the square bracket operator. This is one you have to be careful with. And I recommend you use the double square bracket operator if you have it in Bash. And you also need a space after this operator. So ShellCheck is helping with this. And finally, I'm going to switch out my print to a print 0 in the find. And this is important, especially if your files could have special characters or spaces in them to make your code safer. So here's the final script coming up. And no issues detected. So I consider this a win. We've got more maintainable code and safer code. So before I move on to Bats, a quick digression on programming style. There's lots of style guides out there for Bash. I'm going to put up a URL. This one is particularly good because it focuses on treating your Bash scripts as the programs that they are. And I'll show you an example. I've taken our script and I fleshed it out into a real program. And so you'll see we have local variables, we have functions, we have doc strings, and this line at the top will cause the script to fail immediately if any of the subcommands fail, rather than continuing on blindly. And so we can mark our expected failures with true, and we have a safer script here. So on to Bats. Bats is a unit testing framework specifically for Bash scripts. So now you have no excuse. You can go out and test your Bash scripts. So here's an example. Again, the same little program. We're going to test it. And so our test has two parts. First part, we just set up a structure to make it look like an apps directory with an executable in it. And then we call the program. And then we assert that it succeeded. And I'll get to the helper. The helper comes from this library. And I recommend you use something like this or something similar, like build up your own library, because Bats itself doesn't have a lot built in. So then finally, we actually check that the ownership is what we expect it to be, again with assert success. So here's assert success. We're getting the status variable from Bats, and we're getting the output variable for Bats. And we're just doing some simple tests on it. So next slide, I'm going to run this. Spoiler alert, it fails. So here you go. Here's what a failure looks like. And it's really nice, because you've got a stack trace, and you've got a really good clue as to what's wrong with your code. So now we can go back and look at the code. And here's our fix. So the fix was actually pretty obvious once I knew where the issue was, that I forgot the S on apps path. So it was actually just skipping through this, even though apps path was set correctly. So another win for CI. We've got a successful test run now. So thanks for your attention, and I should mention the Plotly's hiring if you're interested in this kind of stuff. We're looking for DevOps people, of course, especially if you like Python.